Good morning. My name is Charles Dorn. I am the chair of Eric's Club, and I'd like to welcome everyone here this morning. For those of you that don't know, Eric's Club was founded in 1999 by Dr. Clinton Rapole. Dr. Rapole, in fact, is the former Eric Hilton Distinguished Chair and Professor Emeritus. And I would like to introduce Dr. Rapole for those of you. Dr. Rapole, would you Dr. Rapole was instrumental in founding Eric's Club, and for those of us that had him as a professor, I will just politely say he was difficult. Probably not easy either, but he was extremely difficult, and he always knew the morning after fraternity parties. He was particularly difficult on those mornings, but we loved him dearly, and we're thrilled that you're here this morning. So thank you for being here. For those of you that don't know, Eric's Club members have graduated from the college as an undergraduate or with a master's degree or a PhD and have been out of their program for at least 20 years. Eric's Club members have held significant positions in the industry, the hospitality industry, or an allied field at an executive level and have experience very often as a business owner. Eric's Club's primary mission is to promote the Hilton College of Global Hospitality Leadership and to connect, motivate, and contribute to the success and development of students, our primary cause. Eric's Club works to inspire the future leaders of the hospitality industry. We have a great turnout of Eric's Club members here, and I would like you all to stand so you all recognize them, and a quick round of applause for all the Eric's Club members. Thank you all very much. It is now my distinct pleasure to introduce our leader, Dr. Dennis Reynolds, Dean of the Conrad and Hilton College of Global Hospitality Leadership. That still doesn't roll off my tongue well. And Baron Hilton Distinguished Chair and a member of Eric's Club.
Good morning. How we doing? Like it. Good. We're going to be thrilled today. We have an outstanding speaker, probably the best one to date. For Eric's Club, I say this every time, so don't be offended, because the last speakers are right here. I'm just excited. This is one of my favorite days of the year. It's an exciting time for the students and for Eric's Club. What cracks me up about Eric's Club, they don't like me to say this, but this is the best of the best. These people have graduated. They've been very successful. And really, they are role models for all of you. Here's who you can be someday, which is exciting. What's really interesting, though, is getting anything done with this esteemed group, because you've got a bunch of leaders. So it cracks me up. Just something so simple as taking a group photo. I've got 20 people telling everyone what to do. Like, come on, we need to go outside. Let's go. Come on. Like, okay, we've heard that 20 times now. But it is about leadership. And I think for a volunteer organization, getting quality leaders is usually difficult, not for this group. Charles Dorn has done a great job, Dick Wild before him. We've just had a history of stupendous leaders. So just for a minute, could anyone who's chaired Eric's Club please stand? Method to my madness. Notice how many people stood up. And if they're not standing, it's probably because they're not here anymore. Which is kind of sad, but that's okay. But what I really like is people take a role and they actively participate and they actively lead. So this is all of you, right? Our future leaders of our global hospitality industry. Every time we do this, it's like when I put you up on a pedestal, you nod. Yes, that's us. We're the future. Yes. So with that, today's going to be a great day. Ask questions, the mix and mingle afterward. Please mix and mingle. This is a rare opportunity for students. You won't find this at many programs. You have this caliber of people volunteering their time. Many of these folks have come in from out of town. They're staying with us at our hotel, which is wonderful. But this is a long week for them because they came in, most of them, or many of them came in yesterday. We've got the event today. We've got a reception tonight. We've got the alumni or the advisory board meeting tomorrow. We've got the alumni event recognizing some amazing people tomorrow night. And then we've got gourmet night on Saturday night. Okay, with that, thank you and go Cougs!
I'd like to next introduce, for those of you that might have been here last fall, Jennifer and Dan Moe. Jennifer and Dan were our speakers last lecture we did in October of 2023. Jennifer and Dan and members of their family own the Crawfish Shack in Crosby, Texas. And for those of you that think you have difficult lives, we had a little breakfast this morning. We're talking about the fact that they didn't have crawfish for the first 2.5 months of their 5-month season. So if you want to talk about a difficult position to be in, and in fact, they're not staying with us all day today because Dan has a catering job tonight, and a festival where he hopes to serve about 4,000 pounds of crawfish on Saturday. But Dan and Jennifer spoke about their testament to hard work and true grit. And Jennifer is a 1997 graduate of the college. Dan graduated in 1996. Both have been members of Eric's Club since 2019. And I'd like to bring them up and ask them to introduce our speaker for the day.
Thank you, Charles. As he said, we had the honor and the privilege of giving this lecture last time in October, and it's an honor to be back here today to introduce the man of the hour this time, Jason McCann. He's got a very, very impressive bio that I'm going to go through here. He's a serial entrepreneur who co-founded VariDesk, the company created the popular sit-stand desk. Today, that company is known as Vari. Sorry. Thank you so much, Jim. Always here to help. As CEO, he has driven incredible growth, led an expansion into 120 countries, and was named EY's Entrepreneur of the Year. Today, with a complete line of 300 different products, Vari designs and furnishes workspaces for high-growth companies, including 98% of Fortune 500 companies. As an expert in workspace innovation, Jason has been published in Forbes, Entrepreneur, and Inc. magazines, has spoken at South by Southwest, and was named CEO of the Year by the CEO magazine. So without further ado,
You're awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that warm welcome. If I got the mics working, we're good. Tech check. I got to make sure that my mom and dad and stepmother can hear us and see us on the cameras live streaming. So a shout out to them. If my mom will text me, I'll know we're good. So, but I'm absolutely. And Jennifer, but I have her down as Jen in my notes, but I was real proud of the conversation that they had last year. And when they were talking about the pain that they were going through just with the business side, a lot of us go through a lot of challenges out there, and to see their grit and resilience even this morning at breakfast was just inspiring. So excited to be a part of that. Charles, for you to prep me for this, thank you for that, and to get ready for that. And I also want to give a shout out to Doug Brooks, who came on a tour of my building, and probably 6 or 7 years ago. I did not know Doug, but I actually waited tables at Chili's on Nassau Road once, so I knew of Doug. But he toured in the building, and then we connected that we had both attended this amazing university, and he was kind enough, and we had a conversation. And I always knew and talked about, in the early days of your career, you learn. In the second phase of your career, you start to earn. And he said, well, it's actually a third phase, and it's where you start to return. And it was just a moment there, and it stuck with me ever since he said that to me, that it's the time to continue the journey and to start paying these things back and forward and helping all of y'all as you're thinking about that. And so he sent me a book. I think it was the 50th anniversary of the Hilton College, the Red Book, and it sort of was a catalyst for me to plug back into the university on multiple levels. So thank you for doing that. As I think about this, this is a phase for me to do a portion of my bit of return And as I was thinking about the overarching theme of my life, career, business, I want you to think about it as disruption and really thinking about it in 3 ways. So that's disrupting yourself, building disruptive businesses, and really preparing for the disruptions that happen to us all. And as you start to navigate that and start prepping for that, it starts to really connect the dots on how life works. And so I connect the dots all the way back to the first CEO that I knew, that was my mother. And so I grew up in Galveston, my wife and I did. And so my mom owned a hair salon down there. And her first employee was Daryl, and Dorothy was number 2. And so the 3 of us would sit around, and I got to work for Dorothy and Daryl and learn how to sweep hair. And I was a guinea pig when they were doing highlights back in the 70s and 80s. And I'm pretty sure that's why the hair is distracted like it is. But we talked about it. Daryl was gay, and so this is the 70s, and we recognized that diversity was different, and we were talking about that. Dorothy was African American, and that was a very normal way for me to live and grow up. And to have my mom go in there and talk about hiring people, firing people, recruiting talent, to watch her employees go out and start their own businesses and be excited about those chapters that they were going on, were all conversations that we were having around the dinner table and every night. And so that was a great experience for me. I also wanted to go out and start making money. So I started to, if you've been down to Galveston at Dickens on the Strand, anybody been down for Dickens on the Strand? A few of you? Good. So it's the first weekend in December. I Googled it last night. It still goes on. But we went down there, and this is probably in 8th grade, 9th grade. We started doing businesses, and we would set up the little Oliver's Twist game. And that is a Folgers coffee can full of cold hard cash. And that's pre-Square and Venmo and all these other things. But that felt really, really good to make some money. But yeah, it felt good. That's a big wad of cash there. But going through that process was absolutely incredible. And at the age of 15, my mom said I had to get out of the hair salon and go get a real job. And the only place at 15 that would hire me was a beach chair and umbrella company. It was $20 a day, and it's on Galveston. And I thought I was in heaven, and I could go down there and set up chairs and umbrellas. But I really started to get the bug as I sat there and watched the waves crash in every day. And I said, what if I leased my own parcel of beach? And what if I got my own chairs and umbrellas? And this is before Google. So you had to like open up a phone book and start calling people and asking people, how could I, what could I do? And so I leased a parcel of beach, started my own business, and was leasing out chairs and umbrellas to the island's visitors. And my first year in business was, and if you've been down to Galveston, every once in a while the seaweed is about as high as my chest. And that was literally my first season. I showed up, I've got my 12 umbrellas and chairs. I've got an old daycare van. I sold my Volkswagen convertible, and I shoved everything in this daycare van. And I pull up to the beach, and the seaweed is to my chest. So I went back home, and I grabbed a hand rake, and I walked back out there, and I just started raking a path to the water. And I started raking a spot to put all my chairs and umbrellas. And I just grinded all summer doing chairs and umbrellas. But I also sat there and I watched the San Luis Hotel get built and the Key Largo, and watching Galveston, and hotels was on television back then. And I was like, wow, I could work in a hotel and live there. And oh my God, this would be great. And I didn't really know anything, but I knew about the hospitality industry. And so I was very intrigued by it and said, I want to go to college and do something fun. And so I decided to come here to the University of Houston, join the Hilton, and lived here in the towers, and it was incredible. And my goal was to graduate as fast as possible and to go make money. And so I know they always do these crazy arm-raising things, and like, who took 6 years to graduate? Who took 5? Well, I took 3. And I just worked like all of you and went crazy. And my goal was, I went to Galveston College, and when I could, for junior classes, and I just accelerated through the program very, very quickly and absolutely loved it here. But I wanted to go out and take over. And my first idea was to go into the restaurant and nightclub business. And so in Galveston at the time, has anybody seen Yaga's down there? Then yes. Okay, we've got a few reggae fans out there. Everybody's done a little late night at Yaga's, which is good. Well, I knew Mike Dean and Alan Flores barely. They were a little bit older than me, and the brother had a $35 million t-shirt line. That's the same year that Massimo and Stussy were launched. So I walked in and talked to Mike Dean, and I said, I would love to come work here. I'll do any job you have, and I want to learn this industry from the ground up with you. I got my degree, and let's open up one of these. And so Mike said, okay, great, let's do this. And so I ran out, had a couple offers to go at Jason's Deli and some others. I was like, no, I'm gonna take a different route. So went to work for Mike Dean, did every job he had. But the first day I showed up, I'm standing there thinking I'm going to sort of be a manager. And he's like, well, the bar back didn't show up. So you're going to bar back today. And so I'm standing there in my mind with my college degree going, wow, I'm going to bar back. But what I learned in that shift was one, that every job is very, very important. Two, I had a great time just being with the team, the energy. I could feel the crowd and watching the crowd evolve. And if you've ever been into a nightclub, which all of you have, but you can't describe that energy, that feeling that you get when you're in there. I was like, okay, there's something here that's magical that happened. It was an incredible night for me as we did that. And so I convinced Mike that we should open up another Yagas. And so we partnered up and we opened up a Yagas right next to Sam's Boat on Richmond Avenue. And it was incredible. So I borrowed it from every family member I could because I didn't have any money. And at the time, even when I rolled up here to U of H, that's the first time they gave you a Citibank card and a free t-shirt. So I took out every loan I could on every single credit card that I had so that I could buy in. We leased what was at the time Sam's Ice House right next to Sam's Boat on Richmond Avenue. Next door was Rick's Cabaret at the time. The number one's Gold's Gym. The original Joe's Crab Shack was down the street. Everything was on Richmond Avenue. The Rockets won both years. Akeem Olajuwon. It was unbelievable. Unfortunately, as much as I'd learned in class, wasn't a great operator. And so we were open till 2 a.m. every night. And then we would start cleaning and closing. And so we're out at 4 or 5 in the morning. And then the produce would show up at 7. So I'd go back after sleeping 2 or 3 hours, receive the produce, help the kitchen get prepped, get through the lunch pop, take a nap in the afternoon, get ready for happy hour 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And I just went and grinded myself, thinking I could outwork myself. Didn't really understand leadership, team building, empowering others to do things. I had 100 employees, I think, at one time. It was nuts. And the nightclub industry is a very different industry than just the restaurant industry or just the hospitality industry. And was interesting for me, and I caught this when I listened to Jeff Haney talk about it, really the 4 walls of the space became overwhelming to me. And I didn't connect that dot until I heard Jeff talk. But I didn't love the nightclub industry. I also didn't like being the only sober person in a room at 1:30 in the morning or 2 a.m. for last call at 1:45. I didn't like the fact that I, had people using fake IDs and sneaking in there on Wednesday nights for dollar red stripes. Like, it was a part of the college life. I recognize it. But there were a lot of great things that happened, but I realized that was not my calling. And so I sold out to my partners and decided I would come back to U of H and work on my MBA. And so the entrepreneurship program across the street here, over at U of H, offered a great opportunity at the Wolf Center for their entrepreneurship program. I started to study it. Well, while I was going to class, a gentleman that used to work part-time for me and one of our good customers owed me a bunch of money. And so he paid me back by selling this crazy product called Pogs. Has anybody heard of a Pog? This whole section has heard of a Pog. This whole section, a couple of you have heard of a Pog. It's basically like the fidget spinner craze that hit y'all a few years ago. These cardboard milk caps, kids would stack them, they'd throw a slammer on them, they'd go crazy. And so I suddenly said, well, oh my God, how did you do this? What's going on? So I started air freighting pallets of Pogs from California on Continental Airlines, and you'd basically cut them down into smaller bags. Yes, exactly like it sounds. And then I had cargo vans driving all over Texas selling Pogs, and was going to school full-time selling Pogs. And then I decided I wanted to get into and control my own destiny, and I created a kids board game. And so Tiddlywinks, a few of you have heard of, I created a game, and I combined the game of Tiddlywinks and Pogs, and I went and bought a Monopoly game from a Toys R Us store. It's basically a book binder. I took this whole thing apart, built 5,000 of these games using a Heidelberg press. The Institute for the Blind helped me assemble it. And suddenly I thought, I'm going to be the next millionaire like Monopoly or Parker Brothers and sell Nippets all over, because the kids called it Nippet at the time. I showed it to a toy company in Houston here called DSI Toys. I rang the doorbell. I said, hey, I need to figure out how to sell Toys R Us and Walmart. I sat in the lobby for 2 hours, and the president finally agreed to see me. And I showed him my board game and said, I can't believe what you created. It's beautiful, but Pogs are dead. You need to sell every pog you have because you're about to lose your ass and it's over. And I was like, no, I'm like banking. Suddenly I walked out of that meeting and I couldn't sell a pog to save my life. One of my drivers left his cargo van in Austin. He's like, dude, I don't have any gas. I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just, your stuff's in all. I was like broke overnight. I called Rick Knights, the president of that company, because this is pre-email, every day. And I wrote him letters and said, I will do any job you have. You were right and I was wrong. And he hired me and he let me work in the warehouse. He took me to China to negotiate with factories. He took me to Walmart meetings, Toys R Us buyer meetings, and taught me a tremendous amount about the toy industry. And again, I was beginning to disrupt myself. Then in 1999, it was time for me to do something else. In 1999 was the gold rush of the dot-com era that was happening out there. Amazon was probably 3 years old, eToys, Webvan, all these crazy dot-com companies were happening. And I met a gentleman by the name of Dan Flaherty. He'd come into our office at DSI Toys actually looking to buy the company. And I was interested in leaving the company and do something else. So Dan's like, fly to Dallas. And Dan had a Christmas and Halloween company. And at the time sold these hip swinging Santas and these farting gnomes and pumpkins. And I was like, I'm not selling this crap like this. I'm going to do something else. Dan said, I've got an idea. What if we created a Christmas and Halloween company and sold online product? I'm like, oh my God, that's a big idea. And at the moment, I'm thinking, I don't know anything about business, the e-commerce business. I don't know anything about Christmas and Halloween. I got to be in growth mindset here. Could I disrupt myself and create something? And I said, let's go for it. So I threw every little bit of money I had into this deal, and Dan threw in a bigger check. And this was a dot-com gold rush. So people were literally saying, you're doing a dot-com, and they would write us $50,000 checks to invest in our business. So I'm standing there collecting money, starting this business. I had no employees. I went from 0 to 75 employees, 0 to millions of dollars of revenue. I didn't know anything about third-party logistics, e-commerce web. I built it all from scratch with a team, just like grabbing a whole bunch of y'all and we're going. And we're selling product. We're doing TV commercials. It is so, everybody in America is like, dot-coms go public. Dot-coms go raise money, go public. What I hadn't built was a profitable business. So suddenly my CFO is like, hey, cash rate, burn, all the things I studied in school had gone off the rails. Like the entire world, we'd all lost our minds. And so suddenly I'm having like cash calls, like, hey, we need to write a check. And I'm out with investors and I'm up in New York City and I'm in a giant bank room in a boardroom and they've all got cufflinks on and these beautiful suits. And I'm on my Joseph A. Banks, buy one, get two free suits. And the guys are standing there and these are all Harvard guys and Princeton guys. And it was a very humbling moment for me. They said, why would I invest in you? You're not from Harvard. And I was like, no, I got this .com. We're doing millions of dollars. And they're like, we're not investing in you. And I didn't really understand what was wrong. We weren't profitable, but nobody was. We were doing millions of dollars in sales. And this guy took pity on me and said, he took me to the Harvard or Princeton club or something. And we had a beer. And he said, the whole .com thing is going to crash. Nobody realizes it, but this industry is about to go bust. And as I was flying back to Dallas, literally the industry went bust. And I walked in and I had a team of 75 employees and I didn't have enough. And I said, I've got to lay off 25 of you right now. I had enough payroll to pay the next 6 weeks of pay for the other 50 people that were left. And then I started running out of money immediately. Collectors at my door. It was absolutely horrible. And overnight I was bust. And so I walked in one day, everybody had been fired and I'm standing there with no money. I've got a 6-month-old at home. I locked the doors. I tossed the key in the mail slot and I'm completely wiped out. I've got debt out the yin yang and I'm totally bust. And I felt like a complete failure to my family, to my newborn, to my parents that had invested with me and supported me on a bunch of other things, to my shareholders, to all those employees I just had to fire after we had built this amazing culture and team. It was a very, very low point. My business partner at the business I didn't go work for, selling those farting gnomes and hip swinging Santas, created a product called the Big Mouth Billy Bat. And some of you may have seen this at your grandparents' house, and some of you may have owned one. But in 1999 and 2000, this was the hottest consumer product in America. It was unbelievable. And Dan had created this amazing product, sold tens of millions of units. But when we learn, just like with the pog craze, the hotter things get, the faster they die. And so this was an interesting chapter for him. And so he said, hey, and if you lose a lot of money with somebody, it's very interesting if you're still friends, because you've built a bond of trust, you've gone to battle with each other. And Dan and I were still friends, although we had lost a ton of money together. We were still friends and had a lot of respect for each other in the heat of the battle. And Dan said, I need some help with my business. So I decided to disrupt myself again, take a step back and say, rather than be this entrepreneur and CEO, I'm just going to go help my friend Dan build the company of his dreams and act as an intrapreneur instead of an entrepreneur. And Dan had an idea. What if I could take that giant inflatable gorilla that's on all these auto dealerships and turn it into $50 Santas and snowmen that were on people's yards, the inflatables. And his original prototypes were hair dryers. So they had these sewn Santas and snowmen, and the buyers would walk in and they would turn on the hair dryers and they would inflate. And that was the proof of concept for the entrepreneurs out there, the minimum viable product. And a couple retailers did buy them. And then I joined Dan and I started to go, I can help you. And so I took my ego out and I just said, I'm just going to serve Dan and I'm going to help him build this amazing company. And we transformed this business. And today you've seen all those inflatables that are out there. We control Jemmy, not me. Jemmy controls 95% market share of this industry, has generated billions of dollars of sales and really created memories for millions and millions and millions of families all over the globe. Everybody knows about these, from Disney to Rudolph, all these amazing properties. Jemmy's now the largest producer of LED lights in the world for Christmas and Halloween. So if you go into Home Depot, Lowe's, and Walmart and you're doing the app lights or the Disney lights, and so I helped Dan build Jemmy into the biggest Christmas and Halloween company that you've never heard of. In 2009, I became president of Dan's company, and it's been an amazing ride. We had a crazy journey. And then in 2012, I walk into Dan's office, and he's standing at a cardboard box. And we're friends. He's CEO, and I'm president. And I'm like, what are you doing? It's like, oh, back pain. Dan's about 10 years older than me, so I'm razzing him. Like, oh, what's going on? He goes, well, I've got back pain. I'm not really sure, but I went to see my doctor. And she said, well, what's going on? I said, well, I stand up. I feel better. She said, then stand up more. Like, so Rosemary, who was our assistant supporting both of us at the time, went online on Google, like we all did in 2012, and started Googling standing desks for Dan, right? And these crazy contraptions would show up. Dan had that old sort of mahogany, banker's desk or whatever at his office, and these crazy contraptions would show up. And he said, what have I got to do here? There's got to be a better product idea. I got to bolt this thing on my desk. We got one product. It took 8 hours to assemble. Dan goes, I got an idea for a product. And Dan's pretty good at product. So I grabbed our industrial designer and we sat around Dan's desk and he started to describe what became this product. Could it slide out of a box? Could I just put it on top of my desk? Could I just grab some handles and pop it right up? And we're like, sure. So we built the prototype. And we started to like it. And we were flying over to China to work on our Christmas and Halloween business. And Dan and I, just like all of y'all, we don't typically sit together on a trip. You don't want to sit with your boss or your business partner. You want a little chill time. But we got stuck together on a flight. We're next to each other. We're passing a Wall Street Journal back and forth. And in that Wall Street Journal, the Mayo Clinic, Dr. Levine said, sitting is the new smoking. And we're like, oh my God, this is a sign from God. We land in Asia, we have our prototypes built. And for us, a prototype is like a newborn. It's a little rickety, a little wobbly. You think it's beautiful, but everybody else probably thinks it's pretty ugly and is not going to say anything about it. So we ship our prototypes over and we start testing them in our office. So the team at Jemmy at the Christmas and Halloween business starts testing the product. And they like it. But it's one thing if you like it and the president created the product. It's another thing if you want to get it outside the four walls of the business. So we asked around, we're like, who would have a lot of people that are sitting down all the time? And somebody that knew the new president at Verizon who had a call center with 6,000 people. And we're like, oh my God, that's who we should go talk to. So the night before the meeting, I've got a meeting with the president of Verizon. And I'm like, what in the hell am I going to say to the president of Verizon when I walk in there? I've got a Wall Street Journal. I got this prototype of the at the time of VariDesk. And we walk in, and as I'm laying there the night before prepping, I said, we're going to create a happier, healthier, more productive workspace. And as we walk into the meeting, that's what I roll with. Dan's like, what are we going to say? I said, I got it. We're going to be fine. We pull out the Wall Street Journal, sitting is the new smoking. We slide out the VariDesk. We stand it on his desk. He's like, we go, we're going to create a happier, healthier, more productive workspace. He goes, I have no idea what the hell you're talking about. Like sitting is the new smoking, sitting disease. I don't know. But let me get my ergonomist to come in. And I'm like, what's an ergonomist? And that's the person who does carpal tunnel syndrome. Like, I was like, but again, disrupting myself and remaining in growth mindset. The second thing is he brought in his head of HR, who would now be the head of people. And the head of HR said the number one reason that people miss work at Verizon was because of back pain. And I'm like, cha-ching. The ergonomist gave us great feedback on making changes to the product. So again, not having the ego that we knew and had all the problems solved, we listened to what the ergonomist said. We made changes to the product. And they said the magic words, well, how much are they? We'd like to buy some. And of course, I didn't know even how much they cost. So I said the magic words back, what would you be willing to invest in your team members? And suddenly we got market feedback on what the pricing could be. So we were off and running. We started showing it to other great companies like the Container Store. And when we walked into the Container Store, they had just bought Alpha. I walked in and they've got standing desks already in their offices. And at that moment, I said, okay, I guess standing desks are over. It's dead. Literally, I said, I'm about to save myself $1 million mistake here, and it's over. But they said something interesting. Because our product was adjustable and could move and change, people wear different shoes, people move to a different office. They wanted adjustability and flexibility. We want to buy some, and they became our second customer. And so you start to listen to your customers, and they take you on the journey with them. The other thing is we went up to NeoCon, which is the largest furniture show in the world. And we said, okay, and I didn't have a whole big budget. So I rented 2 booths across from each other, and we stood in the aisles of the business with our t-shirts on that said VariDesk. We had our blue jeans. And as people were walking down the aisles, they're all in their suits and they're all looking like designers and architects. And what I was realizing is they were all in the dealer model. And I didn't understand that. And so in this industry for furniture, it's sold just like the automotive industry. You have a handful of furniture manufacturers. They sell through a dealer network. If you want a steel case desk, you buy it from a steel case dealer in your city, just like you buy a Chevrolet from Sewell in your market, or a GMC is a different dealer, just like a Subaru. I was like, oh my God, this is very antiquated. The second thing they said is you have to double the price because we sell on list and discount. It's automatic 50% off everything. We give rebates and cash spiffs, which I don't think is legal anymore, to our salespeople. And this is a very antiquated, opaque model. We said, we've got an opportunity to disrupt it. What could we do? So we started selling our product direct. I swore I'd never do another .com. We turned on a $99 website, started selling our product. And then we were stuck on a tarmac for 4 hours, not at Love Field in Southwest. It was the other guys. But we were stuck on there for 4 hours, no Wi-Fi in 2013. And we said, wouldn't it be funny if we did an ad in the clicking? Sky Mall magazine. We said, wouldn't it be funny? We've got all these business travelers standing or sitting in an airline if we did an ad in Sky Mall magazine. And overnight, we became the #1 selling item in Sky Mall's history. Wow. People were literally tearing out the page, ordering this product, calling us and saying, we want to buy a VariDesk. I got to get one from my boss. And we took off and we did our Google ads and everything started to work. We started to really thrive. Our business became one of the fastest growing companies in Dallas-Fort Worth. Because we were now advertising in the airlines, all these business travelers from all over the world were suddenly saying, good day, mate, looking for a VariDesk. I've never been to Australia. I have no idea. Let's figure out how to do business there. Talking to our attorneys, we could set up a legal entity to do it. Working with a third-party logistics company, we could handle fulfillment. One of my employees volunteered at night to leverage voice over IP and take the phone calls at night and said, howdy, y'all, literally. And the Australians love talking to Texans. And suddenly we were a global business. The other thing we learned is by listening to our customers, they started to bring us on the journey. They started to say, do you have anti-fatigue mats? I didn't know what an anti-fatigue mat was. So I went on Amazon and we were selling products there. And I started to watch anti-fatigue mats that were bundled with our products. So I bought every single mat that you could imagine off of Amazon. And that was my R&D. And I lined them up down a hallway. And I said, could we sell their product through our channel of distribution, or should we create our own product? And my designers were like, we already make all those pumpkins that you go to a Michael's craft store and can carve. That's from Jemmy, which is the same factories that make the soles of running shoes. So why not create our own mat? And suddenly we were off and running. Then monitor arms, clients were saying, I'm trying to get monitor arms, and they're jerry rigging them to our product. So by listening to our customers, we were starting to go on the journey with them. Then we started to aggregate all the data. They did this word cloud, and the number one word that people said when they were thinking about our product was love. I love my VariDesk. Feel better, feel healthier. And at that moment, I realized we didn't have just customers, we had fans. And we were really ultimately serving these entrepreneurs, these business people that were getting transferred. And if we could go on the journey with them, create lifelong fans, they would suddenly be our best marketing tool out there for our business. The other thing that started to happen is we were growing like crazy. So I've got over 100 employees. There are revenue days. I'm doing over $1 million in a day. Like, I am like, holy shit, this is incredible. We hit about 120 people, and suddenly I walk in one day and I don't love the energy of the receptionist. And I'm like, what is going on here? Like, I don't even know who this person is. I don't recognize people in the building. Once I hit 120 people, I personally started to crack. And I recognized from stress symptoms that I was suffering from the same things that had agonized me in the nightclub industry. And I was sort of debating, is it time to bring in a real CEO, like somebody else that can take this to another level? Because it's very challenging to take a business from 0 to $1 million, a 0 to 10 million, a 0 to 100 million plus. And I was debating, can I do it? And somebody said, well, you've got to define your core values. You got to always, and I was like, what do I do? I'd already created VariDesk University. So I'd done leadership training because I'd hired all these great people. They worked really hard, and then I just promoted them. You're now in charge. They didn't know how to have a one-on-one meeting, didn't know how to fire anybody. Suddenly I've got all this extra payroll. And I'm like, what am I going to do? So I had a consultant that helped me, and she said, give me your best people that you would duplicate over and over and over again. I'm going to interview them. And these 6 core values came to the top. Create lifelong fans, embrace change, raise the bar, believe it's possible, be a team player, be authentic. When she emailed me that, she'd sent it to me. The second thing I'd done is I'd reached out to my network and I said, does anybody know a real chief people officer, like a real one? I've read all these books and Delivering Happiness from Zappos and all this stuff, but like, I need to meet a real one. And someone knew someone that knew the former chief people officer from Southwest Airlines. And he was kind enough to say, I'm going to stop by and have coffee with you. This email comes in, has my values. I hit print. I get a call that I've got a guest at the front. His name is Jeff Lamb, the former chief people officer from Southwest Airlines. And he starts walking in, and I'm talking to Jeff, and I'm like, oh my, and for those of you, and Doug knows Jeff, he is an angel from heaven. And he's walking through my building. He's describing the energy of Southwest Airlines. I'd read Nuts. I'd never met her, but I'd read all these books about them. And I said, how does Southwest Airlines navigate their culture for so long? And he said, what they do is they hire and fire and celebrate. Everything is built on those core values. That is the filter. As people are hired and embrace those core values, they add to the DNA and fabric of the organization. I said, Jeff, I've got my values right on my printer. Let me show them to you. And we started talking that day. And a few months later, Jeff, after a bunch of just hanging out, drinking our coffee because he said he liked our coffee, became my president and chief operating officer and helped me scale the business. The business began to expand. We went through this process. We said people started asking us for full electric standing desks. So Steve Jobs, as much as we all love that man, did not create the MP3 player, but he simplified it. And so we did the same thing with the electric standing desk. We said, what if we could create a desk that you and I could build in less than 5 minutes? And so I bought everybody else's electric desk. Our engineers went into the lab and they said we could create a desk that we could build in less than 5 minutes. And that allowed us to continue to scale. We also built walls that move because as I toured Google and Facebook and we're doing these headquarters, every entrepreneur struggles with the same thing. I don't know what my space should look like in the future. We want walls that move, spaces that can move, power that drops from the ceiling. We were literally becoming an ideation lab and showroom for clients. It's starting to crack the code, not only on product, but on the future of how people work and interact from a culture standpoint. And then we got a call from George, who works for this gentleman right here, Mr. Damon John. And it said, I'm with the Shark Group. I'm up in, and we're like, the Shark Group, who is that? In New York City, and I've got back pain and you ordered a VariDesk. So rather than ship it via FedEx, we hand delivered it to New York City. So we roll in, John Moyer does, and hand delivers it, and Damon just happened to be in there. And so they show the product. Damon's like, oh my God, this is great. In fact, I'm doing this whole, I need to redo my entire office. So we say, you should fly down to Dallas. You should come check out all the new products that we're working on. So Damon doesn't jump on the plane, but he sends down his handlers. So his president and George and the team rolls in. So they come in our office and I'm showing them our brand new prototypes of our 60-inch electric standing desk. You can build it in less than 5 minutes. And the team walks in like, oh my God, we love it. We want these for our offices. Damon's gonna love it. He said, the problem is in New York City, you don't get 60-inch desks. You get a 48-inch desk max. I'm like, what? And I hadn't spent that much time in New York City, Jeremy, so I was still working on that. But as we listened to him, we said, okay. And I said, hey, do you guys like barbecue? Yeah, we like barbecue. So I said, take them to Heart 8 Barbecue. It's a mile from our office. You got to order at the fire pit. You guys are going to love it. So my team takes them. We go into the prototype shop. We start cutting down the desk from 60 inches to 48. We repaint it white. We show it. We get it ready. The team rolls back smelling like barbecue 90 minutes later because you can't get out of there in an hour. And we roll in and they're like, I go, we've got your Texas-sized desks here, and I got your New York desks. He's like, you got a fucking deal. Let's do this. Fly to New York. We transform Damon's offices. I get to do a video tour with him. In fact, if you're in Dallas next week, we're doing a private tableside chat together at my office on Tuesday. So Damon's a huge fan. We just did his space in Miami. And again, disrupting yourself, not being afraid to go for it, and really building those lifelong fans is very, very important. The other thing in 2019, we're like, oh my God, what are we going to do? What are we going to be? Why are you still called VariDesk? What could you be? And at that moment, I was like, could I build a brand that could live beyond my lifetime? And so we work with the same company called Landor, and they help take Federal Express to FedEx. Some of you may not realize that there was a Kentucky Fried Chicken before KFC. So this is how it works. So this brilliant marketing firm did a bunch of work for us, took a bunch of our money and did a ton of research, but they were able to help identify that we could become Vari. When people saw it that had done business with us, they loved it. People that had never heard of the word, the biggest challenge was how are you going to pronounce it? Because that's our biggest issue that we still have even today. And so it's been, as we went through it, I also didn't own the registration for Vari.com. So for 2 years, I went to register.com to the who is, and I've been emailing this random person over in Italy, I believe, that owned it. No idea. One day an email comes over around the same time, says, I'll sell you the domain for $68,000 today. So we bought it. $68,000. We now own Vari, got the global trademarks. It was awesome. So I said, we're going to go for it. We're going to spend millions of dollars in television ads. We're going to open up showrooms across the country. We're going to hire a sales force. We're going to transform offices. We're in stock in 4 distribution centers across the US. We're no longer just VariDesk. We're going to transform your entire workspace. We invest millions of dollars in television ads all over Bloomberg, CNBC. Sitting is the new smoking? Yeah, but now we're even transforming workspaces. This is going to be incredible. And then COVID hits. And overnight, I almost go broke. And I'm standing there, and I've just hired 50 salespeople. I've opened up 8 showrooms across the country, and I'm not selling anything. And the world has now stopped. And we sent all of our people home on March 13th, like most of the world did. And I'm laying there at night after night after night. And at 2 a.m. one morning, my wife says to me, if you're stressed out, I can only imagine how your people are feeling. And at that moment, I had to think about them and quit worrying about me. And I started to over-communicate, and I'm very introverted. It doesn't feel like it when you meet me, but I work on it very, very hard to feel extroverted. And I started daily emails to my staff to let them know exactly what was on my mind, weekly Zoom calls, because we were doing Zoom. I reached out to my teams in Asia that were 12 weeks ahead of us on the COVID curve. I said, what are y'all doing? Thermal scanners. We're doing single serve coffees. We're doing stickers on the floor. I did it all in my office. Spread everybody out because our furniture moves. Welcomed everybody back in June of 2020. And I said, we're going to monetize this pain right now. We pivoted our TV ads from we're creating the workspace of the future to Vari, we're your work from home partner. We offered a discount on our website, which we had never done before. And thank God we were in Texas and allowed to operate so that we could continue to ship orders. And suddenly everybody sat at home for 4 weeks and said, I need a desk. And that saved me and got us through the storm. The second thing is during that over communication process, I started to, what am I going to tell my team? And it's very, very painful to be that vulnerable when you're scared to death, to tell them that you're scared, that we're doing our best to get through this storm. And as we went through it, I thought about a dear friend of mine that during the height of SARS and H1N1 and all the stuff that was happening in Hong Kong, he told me years and years ago, he said, we've got to keep rowing until the wind catches our sails. And so one morning I'm laying there and I think about Paul and this story, and I share that story with my team on our all hands Zoom call, that we too have got to continue to keep rowing until the wind catches our sails. And they started bringing in oars and paddles and all this stuff, and hashtag keep rowing became our rallying cry for our business. The other thing during this period is we thought we could also continue to learn even faster by building buildings or buying buildings and transforming the workspace of the future. So on co-working was great on one end of the business. We were selling a lot of desks to these co-working operators. WeWork was starting to blow up during this entire time, during 2016 to now. And then you had traditional office leases, which is a 10-year lease, and this model is very antiquated. And we thought there's probably something in the middle here. So on the center building is the original Zales headquarters that had sat empty for 6 years. And we walked in there, bought it for pennies on the dollar, and transformed it and fully leased it in less than 9 months. We took a building in South Lake, which is the heart of fintech in the Dallas corridor. And that building had sat empty for 11 years. It's one of the original IBM buildings, and transformed that and started to lease it out. And then we built our first building all during COVID, on time, on budget somehow, and built a building that we now lease out. So we own 1 million square feet of office space when nobody wants to return to office in the middle of this. But leveraging my hospitality background and a lot of the elements that I learned here, it was all about creating the energy of the space. And so when you walk up to the buildings, there's music playing outside. There's music in the lobbies. There's music in the restrooms. So in a nightclub, you might want it quiet in the restroom so you can just talk for a second. But in a building, the last thing you want is a quiet restroom. They're even quiet. Why isn't there not more music and more rest? Y'all could make millions if you could just do that. But little details like that get it right. The energy of a coffee bar. So we may work with Liberation, who manages 2 of our coffee bars. And then I'm testing all these cool machines that are self-serve in my building, in the one that we're in Capel. We have Urist as our food service provider. So for me, while I wasn't successful in the restaurant industry, I've now been able to leverage all those hospitality components and put that in. Our team are the cultural ambassadors, and I'm sure a lot of y'all have been recruited by co-working companies because you bring such positivity and energy to a space. You also act as the bridge between tenants and property management. And so there's a huge vertical out there that's getting disrupted. So today we're almost 70% leased in our portfolio, which is huge for Dallas. It's EBITDA positive, cash flows. It's a great business. And I host some of the most amazing companies in our space. Also, when Larry North, who's a big physical fitness guy, closed down all of his training centers across the country, his trainers started operating out of my gyms because 2 of our gyms are over 10,000 square feet and one's 3,000. They train high net worth individuals. I treat that as lead generation because I got all these great CEOs that work out in my gyms. Then they want to put their companies in there. They want their culture and team. Like literally the ecosystem is starting to fly. And so that's been very, very exciting for us. So as you glance at a high level through our timeline, this sort of just maps out all this craziness. The other thing I'm very proud of is that great places to work. And so I think for all of you, as you're building the companies and cultures of your dreams, winning some of those and tracking that data out there. Also, we've been able to do some very, very cool spaces. We've transformed over 5,000 offices. And really, I think about it as cultures for clients all across the country. And that's been a true blessing for us. A great project was for the Mavs for Mark Cuban when they couldn't get any furniture. And Mark's like, I want furniture by Friday. I don't give a shit. Like somebody better bring it. Rick Carlisle, the coach at the time, walks in our office and starts drawing on a marker board. Could you change the furniture and do a layout like this? And everybody went, yeah, sure. And we showed up on a Friday and we set it up, and Mark Cuban became a fan. Issa Rae, right before she blew up, was doing a huge investment in Inglewood and needs some help with her budget. And we're like, oh my God, we'd love to help you. How can we help you? And obviously, it's been a huge project for us. It's been a great journey as we think about it. So as you think about those three things, as y'all are building the businesses, cultures, and you're navigating your future, I think you have an incredible opportunity to leverage all the skills that you're getting here from hospitality. And not everybody connects the dot that it's ultimately, to me, servant leadership that y'all are doing and learning. So you may be serving your guests and clients today, but ultimately you're going to be serving your teams. And that's how you need to be thinking about these things. Really preparing yourself constantly, because every 5 years it's going to change. The technologies, everything that y'all are working on. If you can find those pain points out there in business and you're very passionate about solving it, that's a great opportunity for y'all to build disruptive businesses out there. And really, most importantly, preparing for disruptions, whether it's COVID, wars, economic headwinds, yourself, your teams, your cultures for those disruptions that are going to continue to happen. So thank you. And I hope that connected some of the dots.
Wow. I don't know what to say other than wow.
That was great.
Helps if I turn the microphone on. I'll say wow again. What we'd like to do is open it up to questions. We've got some microphones. We've got some people that can walk through and hand you those microphones. But anybody, anything for Jason? Okay, who's gonna ask?
Oh,
the
Doug.
question? Okay. Oh, Mr. Brooks, excuse me.
I don't need a microphone. So, the
Other people.
Dove guy in Italy that owned the trademark VARI, how much could I have made if I'd asked you to pay a lot more than 68,000?
But that particular day, I don't know that I would have, I barely convinced my shareholders. I personally was going to write the check at that moment, that 68,000. Today, it's obviously priceless in my mind as far as a brand goes. You know, you talk to like a Damon John or somebody, if you can own a 4-letter word, any 4-letter word, and the .com and the global trademarks, that's pretty powerful. So,
Jason,
yes,
good
Mike.
morning.
Good morning.
Tell everybody, they got a sense of your day and your stress and your enthusiasm and your go, go, go. Tell everybody what you do for fun. How do you relax, and where can we see some of that relaxation
Yeah,
occur here at the Hilton College?
I
Give us an
do a
insight.
little painting. So there's one over, I think, in your student center right here. And then you've also got one in the Alumni Center. And there was a pineapple somewhere in the building. So is it in the medical? Oh, it's still here? Okay. Yeah, I joked. Well, during COVID, I was trying to relieve a little pressure. And so I used to do graffiti art back in the 90s in Yaga's days. Thought I wanted to be a tag artist, but I wasn't very good. And in my apartment, you know, you're like spraying a bunch of paint. That's probably not healthy. Pretty masks and filters. The neighbors were not happy. But it's been fun to bring a bunch of canvases to life. And my wife said, you got to get them out of the house. Like, what are you going to do with these things? And I didn't want to sell them. And I didn't want to, but I started selling them to raise money. And so I raised a little over 50,000 last year. I think we're a little over 25,000 this year. We were trying to auction one off tomorrow. I painted this killer cougar for tomorrow night for the Alumni Association. Unfortunately, it got stolen last week. That's crazy. So now I'm like part of an art heist. So like, this stuff could be this could be like Banksy millions here. So get ready. But it's been fun to get out there and really to bring a lot to a lot of, you know, charities and stuff. It's been fun. Yes. Yes, sir. Or ma'am. Where are we going? Yes.
After multiple like really big setbacks where I feel like most people would have just kind of put it down and said it's not for me, how do you continue going through and reaching where you are now?
Yeah, you know, I think during one of the darker periods, you know, I was talking to my grandmother who just passed away at 101, and she would probably tell me the same thing every single time I talk to her, that God only gives you as much as you can handle, and God must think you're stronger than you think you are. And she would just sort of say that to me every single time. Are you working hard? Are you doing your best? And that's really all you can ask. And so I think all the setbacks, even this silly painting getting stolen, I try to now remain in growth mindset and assume good intent and something good will happen. Where in the past I might have gotten tight I think now just starting to remain present and grateful for whatever it is, that this is just the chapter, the challenge in front of me. And this is just a test I got to get through. And I just try to find a way. And I just try to continue to find that flow state. And sometimes it's through the art or just when I'm meditating to see if I can solve the riddle and get to the next step. Because all I got to do is take one more step, because you never know.
Throughout this whole timeline of like all the things that went wrong, all the things that went right, which was the hardest time to remain in growth mindset?
I think, going broke probably during the dot-com crash was the personal darkest period. That was probably the hardest, and I think for me, I've just made lifestyle changes. I think for me, I was probably starting to drink too much during those periods, and I started to recognize that. And so at 40, I quit drinking. I started to wear all black. I used to get stressed in the closet, like literally picking out outfits. It caused me anxiety. It's a very normal thing. Also, I started just like wearing black shirts and jeans. And so I was like, oh, can I wear that every day and nobody say anything? And so I was like, hell, I can try it. And then I realized Steve Jobs did it and some other cool people. So I was like, oh, it almost gave me permission. And so those things I started to just do to navigate through it. But each one of those periods are hard. COVID's been a test. The return to office has been a test. Having all these salespeople that are like, I can't hit my numbers has been a test, And so it's just tests. And so you just got to continue to find a way to get through and navigate those things. But I assume there'll be more. I'm not assuming it's supposed to be easy, because I don't think it is. But it can be fun. Yeah, I'm having a good time. I kind of look at pressure as a privilege at this point. I don't think of it as stress. I think of it as a privilege.
Jason, that was fabulous. Thanks for sharing. And you said something. Is it on? I can talk really loud. And you said something that you just kind of brushed over that I think merits maybe a little bit more elaboration. And you talked about in those moments of challenge in front of all of these employees and investors that you had, that you realized that you needed to be more vulnerable. You needed to open yourself up. I think on my own journey, I realized that leadership didn't mean that I had all of the answers. It was about activating all of that. And I wish you would talk a little bit more about how you leaned into that. And I wanted to congratulate you for sharing that story of both failure and success today, because that's a vulnerability into itself.
Yeah, when Jeff Lamb was on the first tour, as we're walking around the building, he said, have you heard of Patrick Lencioni? And I'm like, how do you spell it? And I started texting Lencioni. It's Lencioni, for those of you Googling quickly. And he talked about vulnerability-based trust as the foundation of building teams. Never heard of it. And I was like, oh my God, what does that actually mean? But by leaning into it, and you recognize as you talk to other people that we're all struggling with different things. My wife talked about when we went to counseling years ago, and I was like, why are you telling the neighbors that we went to counseling? And she said, well, if you think that, other people don't have challenges and they think our life is perfect because it probably looks like it from 30,000 feet, we need to help other people know how real we are. And it's just a very honest way to live. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not telling anybody that we went to counseling. Now I talk about it all the time. And when I meet other couples or people struggle, I'm like, it is perfectly fine. I've called the employee assistance hotline myself. Like, it's okay, right? We all have teenagers. We've all been through crazy stuff. And so by sharing that, you start to recognize it actually does help your team navigate those things. But that wasn't intuitive by my nature. I think I've been working that muscle pretty hard to try to get better and better at it.
Thank
you. You have the stresses when things are not going well, and they're right in front of you, and they're real, and they're not hard to find. But things when they're going really well, what methods do you use to stay out in front?
Well, we had incredible growth, and I looked at it like at that point, I was watching our financials and being tight even in the growth periods, because I also recognize products have a life cycle, businesses have a life cycle. Like I was trying to navigate all those things to stay ahead of it, and that's when I started to recognize those were literally growing pains that I was going through, not shrinking pains. I've been through those a few times. So I know how hard those hurt, but those are growing pains. And so reaching out to other people that are ahead of you on the journey, that have ran billion-dollar companies, and getting them into your network or advisory board, those are the ways that I've been able to sort of grow and have other peers that I can talk to and try to navigate some of those growing things as I'm out there figuring out what's working and what's not. We're in the middle of like, some areas are growing and some aren't right now. So I'm probably like on two boats. As the Chinese say, you don't want to be on two boats. So I'm struggling with a couple things right now, but I feel very good about where we're going, but also know we've got to continue to grind. So. Yes.
Hi. So you mentioned that Dan kind of went from an entrepreneur mindset to an intrapreneur mindset. Could you explain the difference and kind of how you transition between those two?
Yeah. So you think of the entrepreneur as you're the tip of the spear and you got it all. And you look at like a Mark Cuban or something, you're like, oh my God, they're amazing. But there's also if you have an entrepreneur mindset, and so you treat it like it's your own money, you're thinking about doing test and learn, fail is okay, like keep trying. And you have it, but you want to be inside of another organization. I think of that word as an intrapreneur. And so while Dan may have been CEO and chairman of the company, I sort of took all those entrepreneurial things and put them inside his organization. And in my world, like I want everybody on my team to be an entrepreneur. So they're thinking about running the business just like it's their own money, just like they're CEOs of their own companies. Would they make the best decision they can? And you want people with that entrepreneurial mindset, but inside of a bigger organization. So if you're in a giant company, let's say like Hilton, they want a whole bunch of entrepreneurs running all their verticals. But we also need great entrepreneurs that are willing to go for it to create the next big businesses that are going to continue to evolve, whether it's in robotics or AI or what's the next food chain or the next healthy choices out there. Because there's huge challenges to attack, whether it's obesity, or it's, mindfulness, or it's anxiety with kids addicted to the dopamine hits on iPhones. Like y'all have an incredible amount of opportunities to go out and tackle. If you want to tackle it by yourself, that's okay, but you probably need to get a team around you. And it's okay if you want to go attack it with another organization, but you want to operate like an entrepreneur inside of another organization. That's what we all need for really the world to heal and for all of us to get better.
This side of the room over here is very quiet. We're going to
I
change.
think they're waiting. We're just passing mics now.
When you said like from when you were working at the club in Galveston and then you were kind of burnt out and you decided like, this isn't for me, I want to move on. And when you were kind of overwhelmed from the situation of the environment in your office that you came in and called someone to consult. How did you know to I'm at my breaking point, I need to step back, I need help? Like, how were you able to, when did you decide that it was, that you needed to change?
Yeah, I go back to today, I would trust this feeling, right? And if you're waking up at 3 or 4 a.m. and it's one thing to have the waiter stress dreams, like you're in the weeds and you can't manage all 5 tables, like that's a different kind of stress, I would argue. But if you're having sort of the stress of like, something's not right, I don't know what it is, but something's not right, that's when you probably need to seek out some help there. And so for me, I can obviously talk to my wife and she'll start to recognize pressure or when it's the difference between pressure and stress that's probably happening on me. But I trust this and can start to sense that I'm feeling a lot of anxiety and I don't know what to do. And today, which I didn't think about 20 years ago, because I wasn't much of a reader even 30 years ago, but you would read like a book like The Obstacle is the Way from Ryan Holiday and talking about the Stoics. And what they talk about is what are the things you can control? And then what are the things you can't control? And trying to isolate those two. And then if you break it down into today, I just need to get 1 to 3 things done. Like what are the most essential things that I can focus my energy on that will have the biggest impact? Once you can start to break those things down, it simplifies it for yourself and takes the pressure off. We can't control that the crawfish are having a bad season, but these two are navigating other options for their business right now. Like these are the things we can control: our energy, our work ethic, our financial choices. I'm doing the same thing, right? And so I'm feeling all those same pressures of everything. What can I control and not control? And then if I'm going to spend 8 or 10 hours on something, what are the 2 or 3 things that I got to get done that will have the biggest impact for my team? And have I provided clarity to my team so that everybody can focus and execute? So if we've got, this is not my words, but clarity, focus, and execution, the whole thing starts to work. And that's kind of how I break it back down for me when it gets a bit overwhelming.
Thank you so much for talking today. I have a question. So basically, now that you've become so widespread with all the desks, they're all around the world. A lot of people know about them now. It's kind of a craze. How do you see Vari going in the future, and what kind of challenges for standing desks do you see? Like, do you think it's going to phase out eventually? Where do you want this brand to go?
Yeah, so I think about the brand, and our position was to say, hey, we're much more than a standing desk company. And so while the original VariDesk converters got millions of users all over, in my mind, we were going to be able to monetize the transformation of cultures through workspace design. Could I help entrepreneurs and businesses build the companies and cultures of their dream by creating impactful spaces for them? Whether we do it through buildings, whether we do it through transforming their spaces, whether we do it through transforming the future of work and learning, the way buildings can be done. That's where we see the brand going, all built around flexibility and change. When you hear that word Vari, can it be sort of a growth mindset word in there? And so we had a group in talking about just some of the projects we're working on. Was EY had a group in yesterday. They've got all these technology and software companies that are doing all this stuff on the work of the future. It's like, could I be a piece of that solution on the product side? What could our lane be? And I've also got to figure out, can our brand be one of the big brands? So when we went out there and surveyed furniture, nobody had ever heard of Steelcase or Technion or these other brands. They'd heard of Herman Miller. If you had an Aeron chair went broke in the .com business, you know what that was. Or if you're really old, you know what Knoll is. But nobody's heard of these new brands. They think of office furniture as Office Depot Staples, which that doesn't matter. And so now, could we be that brand? And that's what I got to figure out, if we can do it or not. We'll see. I'm still working at it.
Thank you.
You talked about how you're an introvert and how it takes time to be more of an extrovert, and I would have never guessed you were an introvert firsthand. So what is something that helped you to be more of an extrovert?
Yeah, so the first thing, I read the book called Quiet, and if you just do the YouTube, watch her video, and you only need to read the first half of the book. But I didn't realize that introvert didn't mean you were shy. It meant that when you recharge, you need time alone. I don't get like, I will come out of here with like a adrenaline crash after 2 o'clock today from talking to all of y'all, and just probably need like 30 minutes just to chill or walk or run or meditate or paint or think, so that I can be ready for probably tonight's event or something I have to say hello to a bunch of people at. Some people, and you meet them, love the crowd. There's some former presidents that love to be in front of, they get all their energy. They need people around them all the time. Those are the extroverts. They get their energy. If they're alone, they're almost miserable. And so I think for you, just identifying, but Quiet was the first book I read on it. There's a whole bunch of stuff, and it's easy to Google introvert versus extrovert, and there's some great YouTube videos on it. If you start to identify with that, it's like, try some of those tactics. And as you start to read books or think about meditation, some of those things, and get into that moment there, for some people, it's a huge benefit. Other people, I know it doesn't do anything, but for me, it helps a lot.
Thank you. That was amazing, by the way. So my question for you is, does Vari do anything to stay eco-friendly and sustainable?
Yeah, so a couple things. One, when we design the walls, so the amount of sheetrock that gets tossed into landfills is ridiculous, because you go into a workspace, you're like, oh my God, we built the office too big. So we were trying to crack the code on just eliminating product landfill stuff by our walls that move. Could we do that? All the tree sourcing, the pulps that we get, anything we can use recycled materials or semi-recycled products and put that into our thing. We're definitely doing all those things. Also, all the carbon footprints on our packaging, and everything we can do to eliminate it. Also, from a throughput standpoint, it was like, okay, every once in a while we get a return, right? We all do it. Oh my God, it doesn't fit, I don't like it. And we get a return. So we would have 2 or 3% return rate sometimes on our VariDesk. So picture this. Well, I might ship out 1,000 in a day. And suddenly I got 20 that come back. And then I ship out 1,000 tomorrow, I got 20 to come back, 1,000, 20 come back, 20. I woke up and I walked in our warehouse and I've got all these returns. Well, what do you do with them? So I was like, okay, I could burn the bags like Louis Vuitton does because I don't want to have a gray market on my goods. I could sell them as returns, or maybe I could give them away. And so I went to the school district and I said, hey, could we give these VariDesks to school teachers? And it was sort of the start of giving. And it became a full throughput for our product. So to date, we've given over $8 million worth of product to nonprofit organizations. So trying to also rethink the entire throughput of your product. And I know a lot in the food service industry do it right now through their giving portals, but also it's not just, oh my God, we're going to buy recycled plastic and shove it in there. It's like really thinking it all the way through. Then you go, we had Make-A-Wish in Dallas, had this big budget. They built a big building. They're a great organization, but they ran out of money on their furniture. They had a $500,000 furniture budget. Well, we were remodeling a whole bunch of stuff like, wow, we could actually give them furniture. And then we volunteered to build it because it's easy to build. And they had a bunch of people show up. We turned that into a community event. We were able to take that $500,000 budget, make it go to zero. They took that and turned it into 50 wishes for kids. So I don't know what the impact is on that ultimately, but I do know that that ripple effect is much bigger than the $8 million worth of furniture that we've already been able to do through, and the impact we'll have hopefully for generations to come.
Jason, hear your story and you come across to me as a bit of a crisis management specialist. For students of management, would you highlight anything in your leadership style that you had to pivot to in order to be able to cope under crisis?
Yeah, I go back to growing up in Galveston. I always think I've got to be the eye of the storm. And so no matter how crazy it is around me, no matter what's going on, I've got to be totally calm and make the best decision I can and move forward. And in those moments where it's going off the rails, because we all hit it, where you go into fight or flight, like I was in it yesterday for about 45 minutes in a meeting, I could feel it. And the front of the brain is going into decision mode and you're like CEO dad and you're making all these. And then I roll into my house and I realize I'm still in that mindset. And I've got to take a break before I walk into my house just to get back into a present moment to make sure I'm not in a crisis mode conversation. And so anytime I'm in that state, I just try to breathe a little, couple deep breaths, and I try to get back to present. And I just think eye of the storm. Cool. Saving the best for last, don't worry.
Hi, thank you again for talking this morning. It was really good. I guess my question kind of sparked with the robot on your screen, but with the upcoming like technology and like incorporation of AI, how do you think your company like will incorporate AI? Like even if it does, like how do you think that's going to change your company?
Yeah, so Robot Lab is a tenant of ours. I'd never heard of them, but I saw the robot this morning, like at Eric's Club, and obviously we're all starting to see robots. And when I was at South by Southwest, I saw a robot that was basically my size, 160 pounds, so a little bit lighter, and could pick up 50-pound boxes. And it would cost $50,000 for this robot. And it was going to move and unload pallet containers, because that's a huge issue in warehouses, to unload a container, because nobody wants to do it. It'll work 24 hours a day, and all you do is pop the battery pack out and put in a new one. It's like, wow, that's disruptive.
No health benefits either.
No benefits. When I toured China here about, when I was just over in China a couple months ago, I'd never seen so many robots in my life. Like, I've been to China since 1996, and it used to be you would walk in and see factories with this many workers and everybody on the production line on plastic tools making stuff. Today, you'd walk in, there'd be 5 people in a full line of robots, and the engineers are working on maintaining the robots. Robot Lab leased 30,000 square feet of office space from us. And I walked into their thing and I see the robots like you have at Eric's Club. And I met Pepper and I was like, hey, we got this new robot, Pepper, we want to show you. And I walk in and Pepper's there, and they programmed Pepper to have some AI intelligence. And she goes, hey, nice to meet you. and she puts out a fist bump. And I didn't want to punch the robot. And so Pepper goes, "Don't leave me hanging." So I think for all of you, the next 5 years are going to be very disruptive. And so I know you've got data classes and data professors here. For those of you attracted to that and thinking about that, you have an incredible opportunity to transform the next chapter of this industry and any industry you decide to attack. You've got to lean into things like this, as scary as they are, because they're the future and growth. And think of it as a tool. And so when I toured Pepper, and so Pepper's in my lobby and all these other companies that lease office space, the employees walk out and go, "Is this here to replace us?" And they said, no, this Pepper's here to help you. And if you think about horse and buggy days versus a car versus pre-iPhone versus a phone, like this is a tool to help you. The trick is for us to figure out how we can safely do it. And so I think for all of y'all that are this next generation, if you can lean into these things, this is a huge opportunity for you to build some amazing businesses and wealth and all that other stuff that will be very impactful and do a lot of good out there.
So I'm going to ask the last question, if I may. You've mentioned this a couple of times. And those of us that follow you on LinkedIn kind of chuckle about this because we watch your artwork. But the other thing, and Jason kind of casually mentions, he might be the most voracious reader that any of us know. And so he'll be on his way to Asia or somewhere else, and he will literally always post almost the same photo. It's his face with a book halfway across it. So knowing to the students, what would be the couple of books that have influenced you the most, and knowing where they are in their lives, do you think would be important for them to take a look at or to read? I know you're looking at stuff across the world.
I was not a book reader until I took one ops class in the business college, and it like changed my life. I don't remember what the book was called, and Good to Great was probably the other one. And suddenly then I became a reader. So whether you're an Audible or watching YouTube videos, if you do want to think about an author like Lencioni, I mentioned, and the ideal team player that he talks about being hungry, humble, and smart, or the 5 dysfunctions of a team, are probably 2 foundational ones. I think that Ryan Holiday book on stoicism and finding ways for you guys to get through from grit. If you're concerned at all about your generation or thinking about anybody that got an iPhone in the year 2010, I just read The Anxious Generation. It's Professor Jonathan Haidt out of New York, but it really talks about the importance of y'all and my kids and all of us having a culture of grit and recognizing that failure is a part of it and that you've got to build human connections. And in this industry, the beauty is what y'all are creating are the connection points for people. They don't realize it. And people don't understand it anymore. But the value of what just happened today and the few people online, but the value of a human connection is very, very powerful. And if you can continue to lean into what those things are, I think you have a great opportunity to really build some amazing businesses. But any books in those areas, I would say, are great. And yeah, you can hit me up on LinkedIn if you're looking for a particular genre. I'll try to help you out.
How about a round of thanks for Jason McCann? Don't sit down. Don't sit down there. Don't sit down there. For those of you that don't know, the chair that is sitting next to Jason, it is the tradition of Eric's Club that the person that speaks gets presented with a chair. Now, this is no surprise to Jason because actually his chair is already at his house. Okay. But we want you to see it, use it in good health, and thank you very much on behalf of Eric's Club. I'd like to thank a couple of people before we move to our meet and greet. First, I'd like to thank the lovely person standing next to the chair, Rena Zhao, our graduate assistant, who worked for us. And equally importantly for those students in the room, is about to graduate and has a job. And so congratulations, and we are thrilled. I'd like to thank Dr. Dawson, who buried herself in the back row. Dr. Dawson, for those of you that don't know, aside from the many duties that she has, is the Eric Hilton Distinguished Chair. And as a result, we work with her on a really regular basis. And she is our day-to-day intermediary with the college. And lots of times when Rita doesn't know how to do it and I don't know how to do it, we just go to Dr. Dawson and it just gets done. So thank you very much. I would actually now like, and if Ki-Jun Back would come up here for a minute. He's like, what do you want me for? Come on. So prior to Dr. Dawson being named the Eric Hilton Distinguished Chair, Dr. Back was the Eric Hilton Distinguished Chair. And for many years, he was our intermediary and he did a tremendous amount of work on our behalf as well. And on behalf of Eric's Club, I want to let him know that we are presenting you with a chair. That chair is a sample. On behalf of Eric's Club and the board, we want to thank you for all your work and your efforts on our behalf. And so your chair is on the way. We were afraid to order it before the meeting because we just had a feeling, knowing what he knows about everything in this building, he'd find out. So it is on the way, and congratulations. And again, thanks on behalf of Eric's Club for everything you've done. We will finish now, and as we've mentioned, right outside in the foyer, we will have a meet and greet. All the members of Eric's Club will be there. I would suggest for the students in the room, this is obviously not a shy group, as you figured out. They get along everybody gets along extremely well, but equally importantly, we all know what each other does. So if you have a particular interest and you don't know who to approach, just approach any of us and we will tell you the people that we suggest you go speak with. Obviously, everybody's going to want to speak to Jason, certainly fine. But if you have an interest in restaurants, there are certain people here. If you have interest in hotels, there are other people here, consulting, et cetera, and do not hesitate to ask. So on behalf of Eric's Club, thank you very much, and we will see you outside.